Have you ever wondered how much a mother's love is actually worth? Is it worth $1 million? Is it worth a mansion? Or is it worth absolutely nothing the moment you become inconvenient? Rose Vane was about to find out the answer. And the answer was going to hurt. Imagine a house that is too big for one person, a beautiful historic townhouse on Church Street in Charleston, the kind of house tourists stop to take pictures of. But inside, it was as silent as a grave. Rose sat in her velvet armchair, staring at a cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago. The only sound in the room was the grandfather clock in the hallway. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Every tick felt like a countdown to nothing. It had been 1,000 days, exactly 1,000 days since her son, Rourke, had answered her phone call. 1,000 days since her daughter-in-law, Tinsley, had slammed the door in her face. And worst of all, 1,000 days since Rose had seen the only thing in the world that mattered to her, her grandson, Crosby. She looked at the framed photo on the mantelpiece. It was an old picture. Crosby was just a boy holding a fishing rod, smiling that crooked smile that looked just like Rose's late husband. Now, Crosby was 18. Today was his high school graduation. Rose knew this because she had marked it on her calendar 12 years ago. She had circled the date in red ink. But there was no invitation in the mail. There was no phone call. There was only the silence. Most people would have cried. Most grandmothers would have gone to bed and wept into their pillows. But Rose Vane didn't build a real estate empire by crying. She built it by paying attention. She reached for her tablet. She couldn't use her own profile. Tinsley had blocked her 3 years ago. But Tinsley was a woman who lived for attention, and Rose knew that people who love attention make mistakes. Rose opened a fake account she had created. No name, no photo, just a silent observer. She typed in Tinsley's username. The profile loaded. And there it was. A photo posted just 10 minutes ago. Rose felt her heart stop. The photo showed a happy family. Rourke, looking handsome in a tuxedo. Tinsley wearing a dress that cost more than most cars. And there, in the middle, looking uncomfortable but grown up, was Crosby. They were standing in front of Harrow House, the most expensive estate in the city, an estate that Rose owned but allowed them to live in. But it wasn't the photo that made Rose's blood turn to ice. It was the caption. It read, "So proud of our graduate. Can't wait for the gala tonight at Harrow House. Big announcements coming. Vane legacy under new CEO, under new beginnings." New CEO? Rose stared at the screen. She was the CEO of Vane Holdings. She hadn't stepped down. She hadn't retired. So why was her daughter-in-law telling the world there was a new CEO? Something was wrong. Something was terribly, dangerously wrong. Before we see what Rose found next, I have a question for you. Do you think it's fair for children to take their parents' money while treating them like strangers? If you despise people who use their family for greed, hit that subscribe button right now. Let's show Tinsley and Rourke that we are watching them. Rose didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't have a plan. Instead, she picked up her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Mercer," she said, her voice steady. "I need you at the townhouse, now, and bring the confidential files." Mercer was Rose's lawyer. He was a man of few words, but he was loyal. He arrived 20 minutes later, looking pale. He wasn't carrying just one file. He was carrying a stack of boxes. "I was going to call you tomorrow, Rose," Mercer said, refusing to make eye contact. "I didn't want to ruin your weekend." "It's already ruined, Mercer," Rose said, pointing to the tablet. "Tell me what new CEO means." Mercer sighed. He pulled a document from his briefcase and slid it across the mahogany table. It was a legal petition. Rose put on her reading glasses. As she read the words, her hands began to shake. Not from age, from rage. The document was a motion to the board of directors to remove Rose Vane from the company, but it was the reason that cut her deepest. The document claimed that Rose Vane was suffering from advanced dementia and severe cognitive decline. It claimed she was confused, that she didn't know where she was, that she was a danger to herself and the business. It was signed by two people, Rourke Vane and Tinsley Vane. "They are telling everyone you're crazy," Mercer whispered. "They told the investors you've lost your mind. They said you handed the company over to Rourke privately because you couldn't handle the stress anymore." Rose looked up. Her eyes were dry. "My son?" she said softly. "I taught that boy how to tie his shoes. I paid off his gambling debts 3 times. And now, he says I'm crazy?" "It gets worse," Mercer said. Rose felt a chill run down her spine. How could it possibly get worse than your own child gaslighting the entire world into thinking you've lost your memory? Mercer opened his laptop. "When I saw the petition, I decided to run a full audit of the family accounts, specifically the accounts Rourke and Tinsley have access to." He turned the laptop so Rose could see. It was a bank statement for the Vane Family Trust. This was the account Rose had set up specifically for Crosby. It was his college fund. For 18 years, Rose had deposited money into that account every single month. It was supposed to have over $500,000 in it, enough to send Crosby to Harvard, Yale, or anywhere he wanted to go. Rose looked at the balance at the bottom of the screen. 0.0. The number blinked back at her. 0. "Where is it?" Rose whispered. "Where is my grandson's future?" Mercer clicked a button showing the transaction history. Withdrawal, $50,000, Tinsley Vane, event planning. Withdrawal, $25,000, Rourke Vane, cash. Withdrawal, $100,000, Harrow House renovations. They hadn't just stolen from Rose. They had stolen from their own son. They had drained Crosby's college fund to pay for the very party they were throwing tonight. They were celebrating Crosby's graduation by spending his inheritance on champagne and ice sculptures. Take a second and imagine this was you. Imagine you worked your whole life to save money for your grandchild, only to find out your son stole it, to buy fancy clothes and throw parties. How would you react? Would you call the police? Or would you do something smarter? Tell me in the comments what you would do. Rose stared at the 0 on the screen. The silence in the house was gone. In her head, it was replaced by the sound of war drums. She stood up. She walked over to the window and looked out at the street. She saw her reflection in the glass. She looked old. She looked tired. She looked exactly like the frail, confused grandmother Tinsley wanted everyone to believe she was. "They think I'm weak," Rose said to the glass. "They think I'm a ghost in this big house. They think they can lock me away with a lie." She turned back to Mercer. "What time is the vote?" she asked. "Monday morning," Mercer replied. "If they announce the transition tonight at the gala, the board will ratify it on Monday. Once they vote, you're out, Rose. You lose the company. You lose your assets. And Rourke controls everything." "And Crosby?" Rose asked. "Does he know?" "Tinsley has him convinced you're sick," Mercer said gently. "He thinks you didn't come to the graduation because you don't remember who he is. If you don't show up tonight, he leaves for college tomorrow thinking his grandmother abandoned him." That was the breaking point. Rose walked over to the grandfather clock. She opened the small drawer at the bottom and pulled out a key. It wasn't a house key. It was a small silver key to a safe deposit box she kept in her bedroom, a box she hadn't opened since her husband died. "Mercer," Rose said, her voice changing. The sadness was gone. The trembling was gone. Her voice sounded like iron striking steel. "Go to the car." "Where are we going?" Mercer asked, confused. "Rose, if you go to that party, they will humiliate you. Tinsley has security. They'll drag you out." Rose smiled. But it wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile a shark gives before it bites. "Let them try," Rose said. "You said they spent Crosby's money on this party?" "Yes." "And you said they are announcing the new CEO tonight?" "Yes." "Good," Rose said. "Then I suppose the real CEO should make an appearance." She walked past the lawyer, heading toward the stairs. "Mercer, don't just bring the car," she called out over her shoulder. "Bring the red portfolio, the original deed to Harrow House. And Mercer?" "Yes, Rose?" "Call the bank. Buy the debt." Mercer's eyes went wide. He knew exactly what that meant. He knew exactly what Rose was planning to do. It was the nuclear option. It was total war. "Rose," he warned, "if you do that, you leave them homeless." Rose stopped on the stairs. She looked back at him, her eyes flashing with cold fire. "They didn't mind leaving my grandson penniless," she said. "Why should I mind leaving them homeless? Rose is about to go to war for her grandson, but she's walking into a trap. Tinsley and Rourke have guards, lies, and a crowd of people ready to laugh at her. If you are rooting for Rose to destroy their plan, hit that like button. Do not let the bad guys win today." Upstairs, the transformation began. Rose went into her closet. She pushed aside the soft, beige cardigans she usually wore around the house. She reached to the back, where she kept the clothes from her days in the boardroom. She pulled out a black tailored suit, sharp, professional, commanding. She sat at her vanity. She applied red lipstick, the color of power. She brushed her silver hair until it shone. Then she opened her jewelry box. Tinsley had always begged for the Vane emeralds. She had asked for them for her wedding, for her birthdays, for anniversaries. Rose had always said no. They were family heirlooms, meant for a woman of integrity. Rose lifted the heavy necklace. The green stones glittered in the light. She fastened them around her neck. They felt cold and heavy, like armor. She looked in the mirror one last time. The sad, lonely woman who drank cold tea was gone. In her place stood the woman who had built a dynasty. She walked downstairs. Mercer was waiting by the door, holding a thick, red leather folder. The red portfolio. Inside that folder was the truth. Inside that folder was the evidence that would send Tinsley and Rourke to prison, or at least to the poorhouse. "The car is ready," Mercer said. "Are you sure about this, Rose?" "Once we walk through those gates, there is no going back." Rose opened the front door. The evening air was warm. Somewhere across the city, at Harrow House, champagne was popping. People were laughing. Her son was lying. "I'm not going back, Mercer," Rose said, stepping out into the night. "I'm going to get my grandson." As the car pulled away from the curb, heading toward the wealthy district, Rose's phone buzzed. She looked down. It was a text from an unknown number, but she knew who it was. The text read, "Don't even think about showing up. If you ruin this night, you will never see him again." It was a threat from Rourke. Rose stared at the message. Her own son was threatening her. He thought he held all the cards. He thought she was scared. She typed a reply, but she didn't send it. She just deleted the message and put the phone in her pocket. "Drive faster, Mercer," she said quietly. "I don't want to miss the toast." They were heading into the lion's den, but the lions didn't know that the hunter was coming, and she wasn't bringing a net. She was bringing a sledgehammer. Rose is on her way, but Tinsley has a security team with specific orders to stop her. When Rose arrives at the gate, she's going to face a choice that could end her plan before it even starts. You do not want to miss what happens when the car door opens. The Blacktown car moved through the streets of Charleston like a silent predator. Inside, Rose Vane didn't speak. She sat perfectly still, her hand resting on the cool leather of the red portfolio. Beside her, Mercer checked his watch. "We are 10 minutes away, Rose." Are you sure you're ready for this? Tinsley won't just ask you to leave. She'll make a scene. She wants you to look unstable. I'm counting on it, Rose replied, staring out the window. The city lights blurred past. She thinks she's fighting a confused old woman. She doesn't know she's fighting the landlord. The car turned onto the private road leading to Harrow House. The estate was glowing. Lights were strung through the massive oak trees. Expensive cars lined the driveway, Bentleys, Porsches, Ferraris. It looked like a royal wedding, and Rose knew exactly who paid for it. Every light bulb, every glass of champagne, every flower petal was paid for with the money stolen from her grandson's future. The car slowed to a stop at the main iron gates. Two large security guards in dark suits stepped forward. They held clipboards. One of them shone a flashlight into the back seat. Mercer rolled down the window. Good evening. Rose Vane. Family of the graduate. The guard frowned. He looked down at his clipboard. He flipped a page. Then he looked back at the car. I'm sorry, sir, the guard said, his voice flat. Mrs. Vane is on the do not admit list. Strict orders from the hosts. Turn the car around. Mercer looked at Rose. This was it. The humiliation was starting before they even got inside. If they turned around now, the war was over. Tinsley wins. But Rose didn't tell the driver to turn around. She pressed the button to roll down her own window. Elias? She said softly. The guard froze. He squinted past the flashlight beam. He saw the silver hair. He saw the emerald eyes. Mrs. Vane? The guard stammered. It was Elias. 10 years ago. He had been a janitor at Vane Holdings. How is your daughter, Elias? Rose asked, ignoring the other guard. Did she finish nursing school? Elias lowered the flashlight. His face softened. He remembered. When his daughter needed surgery that his insurance wouldn't cover, Rose Vane had written a personal check. She hadn't asked for it back. She hadn't even told HR. She just did it. She did, ma'am, Elias whispered. She's a head nurse at St. Jude's now. Because of you. That's wonderful, Rose smiled. I'm here to see my grandson, Elias. I have a gift for him. Would you really keep a grandmother from her grandson's graduation? Elias looked at his clipboard. He saw the name Rose Vane typed in bold red letters under banned. Then he looked at the security camera pointing at the gate. He knew Tinsley was probably watching. He knew he might lose his job. Elias took a deep breath. He looked at the other guard and shook his head. Open the gate, Elias commanded. But sir, the list... The other guard started. I said, open the gate, Elias snapped. He looked back at Rose. Go get 'em, Miss Rose. Loyalty isn't bought with money. It's earned with kindness. Tinsley thought she could buy security, but she couldn't buy loyalty. If you believe that good deeds always come back around, hit that subscribe button. Let's see if Tinsley's money can save her now. The gates groaned open. The car rolled up the long gravel driveway. They parked right in front of the fountain. A valet rushed over to open the door, expecting a celebrity. Instead, Rose Vane stepped out. The moment her shoe touched the gravel, the atmosphere changed. The party was in full swing on the great lawn. A jazz band was playing. Waiters were carrying silver trays of lobster and caviar. There were over 200 guests, the elite of Charleston, bankers, investors, socialites, the very people who would decide Rose's fate on Monday morning. Rose straightened her blazer. She touched the emerald necklace at her throat. She took the red portfolio from Mercer. Stay here, Mercer, she said. I need to do this part alone. Rose began to walk toward the crowd. At first, no one noticed. But then, a woman in a blue dress turned around. She gasped. She nudged her husband. He turned. He whispered to the man next to him, like a ripple in a pond. The silence spread. The conversations died down. The laughter stopped. Even the jazz band, sensing the tension, played quieter and quieter until they trailed off completely. The only sound left was the crunch of Rose's heels on the stone path. Crunch, crunch, crunch. She walked with her head high. She didn't look at the ground. She looked straight ahead. The whispers began. Is that Rose Vane? I thought Tinsley said she was in a care home. She doesn't look sick to me. Look at those emeralds. Are those the Vane heirlooms? Rose could feel their eyes. They were judging her. They were looking for signs of the dementia Tinsley had lied about. If Rose stumbled, if she stuttered, if she looked confused for even 1 second, they would believe the lie. So she walked like a queen. Across the lawn, near the giant ice sculpture, Rourke was holding a glass of champagne. He was laughing at a joke. Then he saw the crowd part. He turned pale. The glass slipped from his fingers. Smash! The sound of breaking glass echoed across the silent garden. Champagne splashed onto his shoes, but he didn't move. He stared at his mother like he was seeing a ghost. Next to him, Tinsley stiffened. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't look scared. She looked furious. She whispered something to Rourke, then she plastered a fake, bright smile on her face. She started walking toward Rose. She moved fast. She wasn't coming to greet her. She was coming to intercept her. We all know that fake smile. The smile someone gives you right before they try to destroy you in front of everyone. Have you ever had to stand your ground against someone like that? Tell me in the comments, how do you handle a bully who smiles? They met in the middle of the lawn. The guests formed a circle around them, hungry for drama. Tinsley didn't yell. That would have made her look bad. Instead, she did something much crueler. She spoke in a loud, overly sweet voice, the kind of voice you use for a toddler or a pet. "Oh, Rose!" Tinsley cried out, reaching for Rose's arm. "Oh, you poor thing! Did you wander off again?" Rose stood still. She didn't pull away yet. She let Tinsley grab her. "I was so worried," Tinsley continued, looking around at the guests, performing for her audience. "We didn't invite you because the doctor said the noise would be too much for your condition. Do you know where you are, Rose? This is Harrow House. Do you remember?" It was a master class in manipulation. Tinsley wasn't fighting her. She was framing her. She was making sure every investor saw Rose as a confused, fragile old lady who had escaped her caretakers. Rose looked past Tinsley. She saw Crosby. Her grandson was standing by the stage. He was wearing his graduation cap and gown, but he wasn't smiling. He looked heartbroken. He looked at Rose with pity. He believed it. He believed his grandmother was sick. "Grandma," Crosby whispered. He took a step forward. "Stay back, Crosby," Tinsley snapped, her voice sharp for just a second before turning sweet again. "Don't confuse her, sweetie. She doesn't know what's happening." Tinsley turned back to Rose, gripping her arm tighter. Her nails dug into Rose's jacket. "Let's get you a taxi, Rose," Tinsley hissed, her voice low so only Rose could hear. "Get out of here before I have you dragged out." "You are embarrassing us." Rose looked down at Tinsley's hand on her arm. Then she looked up into Tinsley's eyes. "Embarrassing?" Rose asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was crystal clear. It carried across the silent lawn. "Tinsley, dear, the only thing embarrassing here is your attempt at a hostile takeover." The crowd gasped. Tinsley's smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're confused." "Am I?" Rose asked. She pulled her arm free with a sharp jerk. "Was I confused when I built this company 30 years ago? Was I confused when I hired every person in this room? Or was I only confused when I stopped writing checks for your gambling debts?" The word gambling hung in the air like smoke. Tinsley's face turned red. She realized she couldn't outtalk Rose. She had to remove her. "Now!" She raised her hand and snapped her fingers. "Security!" Tinsley screamed, dropping the fake nice act. "Security! Get her out of here! She's having an episode!" "She's dangerous!" Two massive guards, not Elias, but the hired muscle from a private firm, stepped out of the shadows. They marched toward Rose. They were big. They were intimidating, and they had orders to physically remove her. Crosby shouted, "Mom, stop! Don't hurt her!" "It's for her own good," Tinsley yelled back. The guards reached for Rose. One of them reached for her shoulder. The other reached for the red portfolio. Rose didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She simply lifted the red folder slightly, holding it like a shield. "Stop," Rose said. She didn't scream it. She said it with the authority of a woman who owned the ground they were standing on. She looked the lead guard in the eye. "Before you put your hands on me," Rose said calmly, "you might want to look at who signed your paycheck this morning. Because if you touch me, you won't just be fired. You will be charged with assaulting the owner of this property." The guard froze. His hand hovered inches from Rose's shoulder. "The owner?" the guard asked, confused. "Mr. Vane is the owner." Rose smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. "Mr. Vane," Rose said, loud enough for Rourke to hear, "hasn't paid the mortgage in 6 months. As of 9 a.m. this morning, the bank foreclosed." She tapped the red folder. "And at 9:05 a.m., she continued, "I bought the deed." She turned to the crowd. "Welcome to my house," Rose announced. "Now, I believe I have a graduation speech to make. Rose just dropped the first bomb. She owns the house. But Tinsley isn't done yet. She has one more card to play, a secret about Crosby that could destroy Rose's relationship with him forever." And what is inside the red portfolio about the missing mother? The garden was deadly silent. The security guards stepped back, their hands raised in surrender. They weren't going to touch the woman who just announced she owned the building. Rose walked past them. She didn't run. She didn't rush. She walked with the steady rhythm of a judge entering a courtroom. Rourke broke out of his trance. He scrambled toward her, his face pale and sweaty. "Mother!" he hissed, grabbing at her elbow. "Don't do this, please. Think about the family name. If you go up on that stage, you ruin everything." Rose stopped. She looked at her son. For a moment, she saw the little boy she used to read bedtime stories to. But then she looked at his eyes, eyes that were full of greed, not regret. "You're right, Rourke," Rose said softly. "I am thinking about the family name. That's why I'm about to save it." She pulled her arm away and stepped onto the stage. She stood behind the podium. The microphone gave a small screech of feedback. She tapped it twice. Tap. Tap. "Good evening," Rose said. Her voice was calm, warm, and completely lucid. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Rose Vane. And contrary to the rumors my daughter-in-law has been spreading, I know exactly who I am. I know exactly where I am. And I know exactly where the money went," the crowd murmured. The investors exchanged nervous glances. Tinsley was shaking her head frantically at the tech guy in the back, signaling him to cut the sound. But the tech guy was staring at Rose, captivated. "Tonight," Rose continued, "you were promised a new beginning for Vane Holdings. My son and his wife told you that I was stepping down due to, what was the phrase, Tinsley? Mental incapacity?" Rose chuckled. It was a dry, sharp sound. "I assure you," she said, scanning the crowd, "my memory is significantly better than my son's credit score." A few people laughed nervously. Rourke looked like he was going to be sick. "But I didn't come here to talk about business," Rose said, her voice softening. She turned her eyes to the front row where Crosby stood frozen. "I came here for my grandson. It takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of a crowd that thinks you're crazy and prove them wrong. If you love seeing the underdog take control, hit the like button right now. Let's get this video to 10,000 likes for Rose." "Crosby," Rose said, speaking directly to him. 3 years ago. Your parents told me that you didn't want to see me anymore. They returned my letters. They blocked my number. They told me you hated me. Crosby's eyes went wide. They told me you didn't want to see me, he shouted back, his voice cracking. Mom said you were ashamed of me. The crowd gasped. The lie was out in the open. I have never been ashamed of you, Rose said firmly, but I am very ashamed of what has been done to you. Rose nodded to Mercer, who was standing near the projection booth. Mercer plugged a USB drive into the laptop that was running the slideshow. Suddenly, the giant screen behind the stage changed. The photo of the happy family disappeared. In its place, a bank statement appeared. It was projected 10 feet high. Everyone could see it. This, Rose announced, pointing to the screen, is the Vane Family Trust. I set this up the day Crosby was born. It was meant to pay for his college, his first home, his future. She pointed to the balance column. The bright red numbers were impossible to miss. Balance. Zero, Rose said. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. She clicked a remote she had taken from the podium. The slide changed. It showed a list of withdrawals. $50,000 for consulting fees paid to Tinsley Vane, Rose read aloud. $25,000 for a business trip to Las Vegas, and $80,000 for catering for tonight's party. The crowd turned on Tinsley and Rourke instantly. In high society, you can be mean, you can be snobby, but you cannot be broke. And you certainly cannot steal from your own children. You're drinking my grandson's tuition, Rose told the guests. Tinsley screamed. It was a primal, desperate sound. Turn it off! That's fake! She forged it! It's a certified bank audit, Tinsley, Rose said calmly. And it's the reason the board of directors held an emergency vote an hour ago. Rourke, Rose said, looking at her son. You wanted to be the CEO? Well, the bylaws are very clear. Any executive under investigation for embezzlement is automatically suspended. You aren't the CEO, Rourke. You're unemployed. Rourke fell to his knees. He covered his face with his hands. Tinsley looked around for an ally, but the guests were backing away from her, like she was contagious. Imagine the shame. Imagine realizing that everyone knows you stole from your own child. Do you think Rourke and Tinsley deserve a second chance, or have they gone too far? Type "too far" in the comments if you think they deserve what's coming next. Rose walked down the stairs of the stage. She walked straight to Crosby. He was crying. He looked at his parents, then at Rose. He looked overwhelmed. Rose reached into her pocket. She didn't pull out a check. She didn't pull out a car key. She pulled out a small, rusted iron key. I can't replace the money they stole, Crosby, Rose said gently. Not yet. But I can give you something else. She placed the key in his hand. Do you remember the little cottage on the beach? The one with the leaky roof where we used to catch crabs? Crosby nodded, wiping his eyes. The crab shack, he whispered. I love that place. Dad said you sold it years ago. I never sold it, Rose smiled. I put it in a trust that your parents couldn't touch. It's yours, Crosby. The deed is in your name. It's small, but it's safe. And it's paid for. Crosby closed his fist around the key. He looked at the mansion behind him, the symbol of his parents' greed. Then he looked at the rusty key, the symbol of his grandmother's love. He threw his arms around Rose. He hugged her so tight she almost lost her balance. I missed you, Grandma, he sobbed into her shoulder. I missed you too, sweetheart, she whispered. Then Rose looked over Crosby's shoulder at Rourke and Tinsley. Her eyes hardened again. As for you two, she said, her voice cold. Rose, please, Tinsley begged, stepping forward, tears streaming down her face, though they looked like fake tears. We can work this out. We're family. We can all live here together. Crosby needs his parents. Crosby is an adult, Rose said. And as for living here," she gestured to the massive house, "I bought the debt this morning. This is my house now, and I don't live with thieves." She checked her watch. "It is 9:30 p.m. on Saturday. You have until 9:30 a.m. on Monday to vacate the premises. Anything left behind will be donated to charity." "Where will we go?" Rourke cried. "We have no money. You showed everyone we have no money." Rose shrugged. She adjusted her emerald necklace. "I hear the motel on the highway has a vacancy," she said. "It's not Harrow House, but it has a roof. That's more than you left for your son." Rose turned to Mercer. "Escort them out of my garden, please. I'd like to have some cake with my grandson." The security guards, the ones Tinsley had hired, looked at Mercer. Mercer nodded. The guards grabbed Rourke and Tinsley by the arms. "Get off me!" Tinsley shrieked as she was dragged toward the gate, her expensive heels dragging in the gravel. "This isn't over, Rose. You'll pay for this." But nobody was listening. The guests were applauding. An hour later, the party was over. The guests had left, whispering about the scandal of the decade. The garden was quiet. The crickets were chirping. Rose and Crosby sat on a stone bench near the fountain. Crosby was holding a plate of cake, but he wasn't eating. He was twisting the iron key in his fingers. "Grandma?" he asked quietly. "Yes, dear?" "Why did they do it?" "Why did they lie about you? Why did they try to keep us apart?" Rose sighed. She looked up at the moon. This was the hardest part. The money was easy. The business was easy. But the truth? The truth was dangerous. Greed makes people do terrible things. "Crosby," she said. "But it wasn't just the money. They were afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid that I would tell you the truth." Crosby frowned. "The truth about what?" Rose turned to him. She took his hands in hers. Her skin was paper thin, but her grip was strong. "When I went through your father's files tonight," Rose said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I found something. I found a box of letters. Letters that were hidden in the back of his safe." "Letters from who?" Crosby asked. "They were addressed to you, Crosby. There were hundreds of them, one for every birthday, one for every Christmas." Crosby's heart started to race. "Who were they from?" Rose took a deep breath. She reached into her purse and pulled out a single, crumpled envelope. It was postmarked from France. "You grew up believing that your mother died in childbirth," Rose said. "That's what Rourke told you. That's what he told everyone." "Yeah," Crosby said, his voice shaking. "She died in the hospital." Rose placed the letter in his hand. "No, Crosby," she whispered. "She didn't die. Tinsley isn't your mother. But your real mother, she is very much alive. And she has been trying to find you for 18 years. Crosby stared at the letter. His hands trembled as he touched the paper. He looked at the name on the return address. Elena. "She's alive," Crosby gasped. "But where is she?" Rose stood up. She looked toward the horizon. "Pack your bags, Crosby," she said. "We aren't staying in Charleston. Tomorrow morning, we're going to the airport." "Where are we going?" Rose smiled, a smile full of mystery and danger. "We're going to Paris," she said. "We're going to find your mother, and we're going to find out why your father wanted her dead. Who is Elena? Why did Rourke fake her death? And what dark secret is Tinsley hiding that made her banish Rose in the first place? The story isn't over. In fact, the real mystery is just beginning. If you want to see Part 2, The Search for the Missing Mother, you must be subscribed with notifications on. Comment Paris below if you are ready for the next chapter. Thanks for watching.